Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing a 2024 election prediction between Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida and President Joe Biden. So initially, let's start with Governor DeSantis. Governor DeSantis entered into the 2018 gubernatorial election in the state of Florida versus Andrew Gillum, the Democratic nominee. He won that election, although it was very close. However, Governor DeSantis rose in popularity after his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. He was praised by lots of Floridians and Republicans and conservatives alike. Nationwide, he was praised because, as you know, many people know, Florida had minimal mask regulations and it opened up very quickly. And Governor DeSantis has publicly opposed things such as vaccine passports, which gave him lots of popularity amongst Republicans in Florida. But Governor DeSantis has almost 60% approval rate in Florida, which is unprecedented for a Republican candidate there. On the contrary, President Biden is a very well-known figure, and considering his approval rating in his first 100 days, he has a strong chance, if he stays on the trajectory that he's on right now, at winning in the 2024 election if he decides to run. Biden has had, in his first 100 days, a plus 13% approval rating. Contrary, President Trump at this time in his presidency had about a negative 15% approval rating. So it's important to note the discrepancies between both of those candidates. But why are people talking about Ron DeSantis? Well, Ron DeSantis is almost a second place Republican nominee. He is likely who the Republicans would run within the primaries and who would likely win and become the Republican nominee if Trump decides not to run. At the CPAC event, he got second place within the poll. CPAC is this event, it's this convention amongst conservatives and Republican leadership. It is traditionally held in actually Maryland, but this year it was moved down to Florida because of COVID-19 regulations. But CPAC is this event where lots of conservatives come together. President Trump gave a speech there this year, and it is almost this place to gather party sentiments and outline and dictate where the party is going in the future. At the CPAC event, there's a poll that's taken place, and Governor DeSantis did surprisingly well. He got the second place vote. Obviously, many people overwhelmingly voted for Trump in 2024, but DeSantis got second place. He got about 43% of the CPAC vote amongst that Republican leadership that attended. And so it's worth looking at what this election and what this scenario would look like because it is a very possible scenario. Trump said that he's considering running in 2024, but if he doesn't run, it's likely that DeSantis is the candidate that is presented as the Republican nominee. But who is Ron DeSantis? So Ron DeSantis is the Donald Trump in terms of political ideology without the chaos, without the off-the-book claims that President Trump is so popular for. People liked Donald Trump, and Donald Trump has a strong base, but many voters were deterred by the fact from his mouth, from his Twitter, from his lack of leadership around COVID and during his during the COVID-19 pandemic. Many people didn't like the fact that Trump was so boisterous in his claims, and he was so loud and so almost belligerent in Twitter on his Twitter account, which is some of the reasons why he got banned from those platforms. But who is Ron DeSantis? Ron DeSantis is President Trump without those boisterous claims, especially because Trump was known for going off the book many times, but Ron DeSantis is not that type of person. But it's important to note that Ron DeSantis isn't the super awe-inspiring candidate. He isn't the inspirational candidate like Trump. He doesn't motivate people like Trump does. But he does have lots of individual popularity in Florida. But it's important to note that that might not translate nationwide, especially because Biden has a lot of national popularity amongst the entire United States, whereas it's unsure and it's unclear whether Ron DeSantis would have that same sway like Trump does. But my personal opinion, I think that the Republicans would actually be better off running Ron DeSantis than Trump. It's because I think that Trump is locked within this political stalemate where he can win certain swing states and he polls and does very well there, but he can't win others to win the election. So states such as Iowa, Florida, and Ohio all surprisingly, all drastically go and vote for Trump. Trump's base is very, very strong, but it isn't enough to win elections because to win elections, Trump needs Wisconsin, he needs Michigan, he needs Pennsylvania, He needs Arizona. He needs Georgia. He needs those type of states. And Trump can't get those states because running President Trump means getting backlash, means getting reactionary forces by the other side. Because Democrats play on Trump a lot. That's the reason why Joe Biden won this election, because Trump sparks a lot of people to backlash against him. He sparks a lot of people to go against him, which is why he lost this election. And it's a reason why America is so polarized right now. But Ron DeSantis is the opposite of Trump. He has a good shot of the presidency. And it's important to note why Trump did so much better than the polls thought he would in the 2020 election. Because the polls had Trump doing very, very terribly, but Trump outperformed the polls in almost every scenario. But it's because of the silent Trump voter, which is what I like to call it. A lot of people liked Trump's policies. They liked Trump's tax cuts. They liked everything that he did in bringing jobs back to America and his America First policy. They just didn't like his boisterous mouth, which is why he actually had lots of people called the silent Trump voters that voted for him, which is why I think that Ron DeSantis can access that base and build upon it. He can expand upon that base of silent Trump voters that like ideology, that like everything that Trump does, they just don't like his voice. I will start highlighting within the map the different polls and what I think different states will do, but let's get straight into it. So let me just fill out the Republican and Democratic safe states. So these are states that are safe for either party. It would be unlikely that President Joe Biden could get or flip any of the Republican safe states, and it would be unlikely that Ron DeSantis could flip any of the Democratic safe states. So that would be the states of Washington, Oregon, California. I'm going to classify Nevada, but I will talk about it. Idaho is for the Republicans, Montana, Wyoming, Utah, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, but I'll leave the 2nd district out for now. Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas. I will talk about Texas, though. Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Missouri, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana. I will talk about Ohio. I forgot about Kentucky. And then the Democratic states, and especially in the Northeast, states such as Virginia, D.C., Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Vermont, New York, New Hampshire. Many people think that Trump has a shot, or DeSantis, or even the Republicans have a shot at New Hampshire, but that is not the case. I will also talk about that. The state of South Carolina, Illinois, Colorado, New Mexico. I think that's everything. All right. So first, oh wait, I forgot, Alaska and Hawaii. So first, let's talk about the state of Minnesota. I think, and I have said this in previous videos, the Rust Belt is something that could be accessible to Ron DeSantis. As I said before, a lot of Democratic voters in the Rust Belt are moving down south to Texas and Florida. And I think that Minnesota went for President Biden by about 7%. I think that DeSantis in an election could bring that down to about 3 to 4%, because people are moving down, but also because DeSantis has that likability to him that Trump didn't have. So which is why I would actually characterize Wisconsin and the Rust Belt. I'll highlight those a little bit later, but I will highlight them a certain way. But I think that the states of Minnesota actually could go pretty drastically down in their percentages. I think that Minnesota might only go to the Democrats by about 3 to 4%. Next, let's talk about the state of Texas. Texas is going more Democratic. As I said before, all of those voters from the Northeast and from the Western United States, from California, from Oregon and Washington, they're going down to Texas. And in fact, Joe Biden was the first Democrat since 1976, since Jimmy Carter's election versus Gerald Ford, to get a certain percentage in Texas, to get a certain low percentage in Texas. Texas only went to President Trump by north of 5%. I think that in the 2024 election, if Ron DeSantis or if President Trump are the Republican nominees, Texas will only be won by the Republicans by about 1 or 2%. Next, let's talk about the state of Iowa. So Trump has done historically well in these states, which is what I talked about before. Trump's base will support him and make sure that he wins the states of Iowa and Ohio and Florida by large amounts. Trump won Ohio by, I think, around 7%, which is unprecedented. Ohio has always been a swing state, which is why I think that Ron DeSantis could tap into some of Trump's base, especially if he gets Trump's endorsement, which is why I think the state of Ohio goes to the Republican Party along with the state of Iowa. Additionally, if DeSantis is able to tap into Trump's base even a little bit, he obviously wins the state of Florida because his popularity there is unrivaled. Not only because he's a governor, but because the people of Florida, even the minority populations of Florida, still agree with Ron DeSantis. I think that Florida could go very, very likely, almost close to maybe even 7-8% for Ron DeSantis because of his high approval rating there. Which is why I think that the states of Florida, Iowa, and Ohio go to the Republican Party because Trump already had and did massive strides in those states, and I don't think DeSantis will perform as well as Trump in those states, but he will still win those states. The next state that we'll talk about is the state of North Carolina. North Carolina is actually where the election becomes closer. North Carolina has always been a close state for the Republican Party, but the last time it was won by the Democrats was in 2008 when Obama won it. But since then, it's gone for the Republican Party, which is why I think Ron DeSantis would still win the state of North Carolina, but it might be a little bit closer. It might only be by about 1% or even less than 1%, but Ron DeSantis still wins the state of North Carolina. Let me get into the districts here. Nebraska's 2nd district. In Donald Trump's 2016 election, yes, he did win the 2nd district of Nebraska, but it is unlikely that Ron DeSantis performs better than Biden in this district. This district encompasses a major city, the city of Omaha, and it is just unlikely that Ron DeSantis wins this district, especially because he will underperform Trump in those areas where Trump does best, which is why the 2nd district of Nebraska will go to the Democratic Party. The 2nd district of Maine, however, will, on the contrary, go to the Republican Party, especially because Trump had a good performance there, and I think that DeSantis, even if he does underperform Trump there, he will still win that district. The next states that we are going to talk about, just so everyone has it clear, the Democrats are at 232 electoral votes and the Republicans are at 235. So Biden's at 232 and DeSantis is at 235 electoral votes. The next states that I'm going to talk about are the Rust Belt. I think that DeSantis has a good shot in the Rust Belt. There are a lot of centered voters here. A lot of the American electorate is centrist, but there's a lot of centrist voters in the Rust Belt that sway elections, especially because all of those states are good prizes. The state of Wisconsin is 10 electoral votes, Michigan 15, Pennsylvania 19. Those are very good prizes for whichever party wins those, which is why I think that Ron DeSantis actually has a good shot at the state of Wisconsin. Biden only won the state of Wisconsin by 0.7%. As more people from the north move down south, that's going to become even harder for Biden to have a hold on. It's going to be harder, especially when you consider the Rust Belt a couple elections ago was a Democratic stronghold. Michigan at one time went to Obama plus 16%. But now it's likely that Wisconsin and Pennsylvania actually go to DeSantis. However, I don't think that DeSantis can carry the state of Michigan. Michigan went to President Biden by about 3%, and I don't think DeSantis can outperform Trump as well to offset the number of people that are going down south, which is why I think that the state of Michigan will go to the Democratic Party. That leaves 2 more states, the states of Arizona and Georgia, and these states will dictate the election. Let's start with the state of Arizona. Arizonians love President Biden. They voted for Biden in 2020, but a lot of them are more centrist, especially because the last real Republican to win a good election in Arizona was John McCain, and John McCain was a very centered Republican leadership. He was a very centered Republican senator, which is why I think that Arizona, especially because John McCain's wife actually endorsed President Biden, it's likely that that would happen again in 2024. And Arizonians care about their regional leadership. They care about their senator's wife. They care about the people. They care more about the people on the statewide level than they care on the nationwide level. Even though DeSantis will be from the Republican Party, it's likely that Arizona goes blue again because a lot of those voters like President Biden, and President Biden is approved of. He is an approved of president, which is why I think that the state of Arizona actually goes to the Democrats. Because even though there's a lot of voters in Arizona that actually might be center-right leaning or maybe or sway a bit more to the right, those people still will vote for President Biden because of the endorsements that he got from their regional leadership. Even though Governor DeSantis isn't as boisterous of a candidate as President Trump, he will still spark something among the Trump base that a lot of those Arizonian voters won't like, which is why the state of Arizona goes to the Democratic Party. The last state is the state of Georgia. Now, this state would decide the election, and this state would be probably the closest state in this election. You have to remember that if we go to the map here, Biden only won the state of Georgia by around 0.2%, which is almost nothing. There was only about 12,000 votes that actually made a difference in that election. If DeSantis is able to tap in and expand a few more voters in the Georgia base, that he might actually win the election in Georgia, especially because the African American turnout in the state of Georgia was the highest it's ever been. It might have hit its peak, and if it did hit its peak, then DeSantis might actually have a good shot at winning Georgia. But I think that Georgia still goes to President Biden because of all those Democratic voters moving from the north and moving down, and because African American turnout will still increase, and minority turnout will increase for the Democratic Party within the bigger cities such as Atlanta. But I do think that this election will be actually closer than Trump's election. I think that DeSantis will be a better candidate because a lot of people just didn't like the way that Trump acted, the way that Trump portrayed himself, and DeSantis isn't that character. DeSantis is more quiet. He's more intellectual, you could say. And so it's easier for people to like him, at least more than President Trump, which is why it would not be unlikely if DeSantis is actually able to flip the state of Georgia. I think that on the current political trajectory, Biden still wins the state of Georgia because he is just highly approved of and a lot more people like him, and more voters from the north and more Democratic voters from the north are still going to be moving south since 2020 to 2024. He will still win the Georgia election. He will still win it statewide, but it might be closer than what Trump did. It's hard to tell now because we're so far out from the 2024 election, but it's important to note that this scenario might happen. Obviously, these are my opinions on which candidates and which nominees I think will perform better in different parts of the country and affect the American electorate, but it's important to understand what these scenarios might look like because this might be your 2024 electoral map. If Trump doesn't run, it is actually likely that the map looks like this. Thank you all for watching, and goodbye.